Welcome to our Everything is Better with Creators Beyond Disability series. In 2022, Whalar joined forces with C Talent, a Cannes Lion winner and one of the top management and consultancy companies representing high-profile deaf and disabled talent. I'm Ashley Rudder, and in this series, we're on a mission to change the way people view and define disability. I will interview top C Talent creators and global thought leaders from across the disabled community to start difficult conversations, to raise awareness, and acknowledge the lives of disabled people. Now, let's get these conversations started. Today, we're excited to be speaking with Imani Barbarin, a speaker, writer, creator, and inclusion activist who speaks from the perspective of a Black disabled woman. Imani has published articles in Forbes, Rewire, and Healthline, as well as on her own platform, Crutches and Spice. To date, she has created more than a dozen trending hashtags that allow disabled people to tell their stories from their own perspective, including hashtag patients are not faking, hashtag things disabled people know, and hashtag ableds are weird. Hello, hello. We've got Miss Imani in the building. How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful, thank you. Well, you know what, Imani, before we get started, let's get our audio description going here. I'll start. So, hello everyone, I'm Ashley Rudder. I am the head of creators here at Whalar, and I am wearing a short sleeve cream colored sweater. I have long braids, I have winged eyeliner, and I have a vase of yellow roses sitting next to me.
Hello, everyone. My name is Imani Barbarin. I am a disability rights and inclusion activist. I am an African American woman. I have red hair, brown eyes. I am wearing a brown, yellow, and blue flower dress, and I'm in front of like a blank wall.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I just love kicking things off with an origin story, Imani. Do you mind if we start there? I would love for you to tell our guests and kick things off with you marking any core memories that really help form the person that you are today, and just like walk us through your life for a second.
Yeah, my biggest core memory is the one that started the hashtag Ableds are weird, which is I went swimming once and I leave my crutches next to the pool so I can get out and walk. And some guy thought that I needed them to swim and threw them in the pool next to me, and they sank, and I had to go get them. That was my villain origin.
No
Yeah,
way.
yeah, and I was very pissed because and they sank and then they rusted for like weeks afterwards. They were like always leaking like a brownish orange water.
Oh no.
Yeah, but I started my blog in 2014 to talk about my experiences as a disabled Black girl, and just it kind of grew from there. As soon as I wanted to start talking with other disabled people, and get other people reading my work, as well as just interacting with different community members, and so that's kind of how I started out. All the social media, all of it, was on my blog.
Incredible, incredible. So, you know, I've done my homework, Imani. I've done a little cyber stalking. I'm just warning you. Very impressive, to say the least. Like, you have a master's in global communications. Excuse me, please and thank you. And I mean, come on, you've got you're multilingual, and I'm telling you, you were writing for everyone from Forbes to Healthline, and of course your blog, like you mentioned, Crutches and Spice. And so, I have a feeling that all of these hashtags that you've been putting out there, and for those of you who don't know, Imani is responsible for creating dozens of trending hashtags that allow the disabled community to share their perspective and around the world. And everyone's taking a huge notice. I have to know, like, what was the process of building those hashtags,
Yeah.
and like walk us through that experience.
Well, I always so the hashtags came from really listening to the disability community. I can always kind of like put a pin in a moment when I can realize there's something going on simultaneously there's no like filter like or outlet for people to speak about it in like one condensed area of the internet.
Mm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
timing was always really important. Because I always like started hashtag like Saturday morning because it was a very like the
Ah,
weekends are very difficult news cycles for journalists. So during their pitch, yeah,
interesting.
so like I used to work for like different news outlets and content outlets, and the weekend is a very difficult time for people to get stories because they have to pitch them Monday morning. So like there's really nothing going on during,
Mm.
generally speaking. But we live in a 24-hour news cycle, so they usually pick up on things that are trending over the weekend as something to talk about during that week. So like you could actually like extend the shelf life of a hashtag if you time it just right. And so yeah, so yeah,
Brilliant. Stop. Okay, keep going. This is the juice that we're here for, Amani.
so I would actually start with like a hashtag myself and like do several myself. And then I would, as soon as people started joining in, I would retweet them, especially if they were stories that were in line with the type of responses that I thought went with the original hashtag. And then I would retweet those. And to the point where like disabled people started just retweeting each other. And like I was more or less like on the back end just like watching people have these conversations with one another and letting disabled people kind of take the charge of these conversations. And so like that's kind of how it started with hashtags was I could kind of see a moment and then be like, I think that we can boil this down and get it synthesized underneath one hashtag where people could find it and find one another.
Mm. Incredible. Okay, like come on, like the strategy.
Yeah, yeah, people don't know it was a strategy, but I would do it like, and people didn't notice I was doing it Saturday mornings because I was just yeah, it was they
Hmm.
would see on a Saturday morning. And they're very,
Incredible.
yeah.
I hope everyone's taking notes, because again, like it really is about that synergy, like one thing stacking on top of like listening, understanding the community. You are the creator that's tapped in. You're the person, you're tapped into it. You understand, and on top of that, you understand how the algorithm works. So all those brilliant things is what truly does ladder up to virality. And come on, let's talk about the community that you're building here, and how has that affected you, and then also affected the community as a whole, like these hashtags, and what are the things that you're seeing that surprised you?
One of the things is I try to really keep an open mind and make sure that I'm cognizant of the fact that disabled people have such diverse experiences, but there are very common threads in the ways in which non-disabled people interact with us. And so usually the hashtags that do the best aren't necessarily hashtags about like our individual lived experiences because those are so different, but the way we are socialized and treated and our
Mhm.
ability to hold up a mirror using a hashtag is usually kind of the best type of conversation that usually happens, because then people could take a step back and be like, oh wow, I had no idea. Or disabled people could look at one another's stories and say, oh my god, I had no idea people were experiencing the exact same thing I'm experiencing and for the exact same reasons.
Mm,
Because when you talk about disability, we're so isolated as individuals. We're in neighborhoods that are inaccessible, we're in communities that don't really count part of
mm,
their spaces, and so it leads for a life that's really isolating and lonely. But the internet kind of provided us the ability to say, oh no, these experiences are very, very, very common. And so I learned from the disability community, especially like being able to listen to community is the most important part. Like just being able to sit back and understand like you don't know what you don't know, and like not to forward and go,
mm. Big
what
time. Big
right. So
time.
many people want to just jump in and be like, I know, like, take a step back. Like, I understand you want to talk about your experiences, do that, but like, make sure you're
Mm,
listening to other people and what they have to say. And so I think what disabled people learn from one another is just like that they're not alone, that this is so much more widespread than we
right.
realize, and that
Mm-hmm.
together we can make these stories more prevalent and we could change the tides of our futures based off of how we decide to build community with one another today.
Let's talk about accessibility, because I know, again, like, you do so much work advocating and shedding light on accessibility. Like, what are just tell me some boilerplate, like you said, someone's like, I didn't know what I didn't know, right? Like, what are things that you think that are simple ways to start? Could you give any tips or like places to plus it and just really get there, help get people's mindsets in the right place to be thinking about
Yeah,
accessibility?
well, when I give this metaphor during talks and all that stuff because I am a public speaker as well. Well, I tell people, if you asked me for change for $20 and I give you $15 back, would you? Oh, excuse me. Yeah, if I give you $15 back, would you accept that? And most people are like, no, I asked for full change. That's what happens every single time you don't think
Right.
make things accessible. Disabled people account for about 25 to 26% of the
Mm,
population at any given, and it's
huge.
even bigger now because of COVID. So there's a growing population,
Mm.
and it's an ever self-populating population. So when you don't make things accessible, you're not really reaching as many people as you could. Now, a lot of people think that accessibility is solely on the individual. I think accessibility is also a community conversation to be had. Making sure, like, there's boilerplate things like ASL and captioning, but if you're in like a bigger space, like you're creating a convention or a speaker series, are there quiet rooms? Are you taking breaks during long sessions? Things like that, and making sure that you have people on your team from the get go that understand accessibility, or that accessibility is just necessary. That's really important. And I there's also like different apps and plugins that you can get to create transcriptions or captions if that's not something that happens automatically with the apps that you're using. The tools are out there. You have to look for them. There's rev.com, there's mixed captions if you're using iPhone, there's all types of things you could be using to make your content more accessible.
I have to ask because I'm nosy, Imani. Like, I'm sorry, you've been on boards advocating and consulting for presidents. And yes, I said there's a S at the end of that, listeners. Clinton administration, Obama. Let me toot your horn, Imani. Hold on. And so, like, how in the world, and being a public speaker, being an advocate, all of these things, like, how in the world are you fitting content creation in all of this? How are you balancing all
To
of
be
that?
clear, I don't consult politicians. I just harass them. But
Ah!
like, I just want to make sure that that's clear out there. Um, because I'm not gonna sit up here and be like, I could no.
Some you have a hype person out on the internet, that because this is my greater internet research. I love that you're fact checking me right now. Don't quote me on this.
It's okay. No, but like, people have asked me for years to get more involved in politics. I was working for a district organization for the last 3 years and doing more local work to the state of Pennsylvania, where I live. And I was doing all my speaking, social media on top of that. And I just left that job in April to do this more full time, which is a blessing, but
Hmm.
also I'm one of those people that can't say no. So I'm like, I have to do everything all the time, so which is very rough on me, and other Black disabled people are like, you need to take a break, and I'm like, I will not. So it's very difficult, but I think that it's really hard to create this separation between like work and your social media and all this different stuff, because when you're advocating based off of your experience, there's no time in which you could turn that off, right? No, go to bed
Mm-hmm.
and be like,
Mm-hmm.
I can't think about, how there's inaccessibility out in the world. My bathroom's not accessible to me, or like I had an argument with a DoorDash driver because they didn't believe I was actually disabled, or there's always like these different things. Oh
Stop
yeah, I
it.
had somebody like literally interrogate me over why they needed to bring my order upstairs because I was like, I can't carry it. They're like, well, how do you go downstairs? I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, you just want my order. Please just bring me my food. But yeah, there's always, you
Unbelievable.
always kind of feel a little bit small when you're not on the internet, because all of your, like, there's still people out in the world that you have to interact with that don't care about your accessibility or your needs as a disabled person, and it can kind of feel like I have all this ability to say so many things online, but when I'm in person, does that really matter when people don't see me as worthy of the accessibility that I need?
That's just wild to me. And then I think now that you've said this, it is bringing to mind the fact that, we talk a lot about how social media has democratized everything, right? Like it's just been the great equalizer in so many ways. Like, tell me again, has what has social done in terms of democratizing your voice? Like, where do you feel like you've made space where there may not have been, and also like what can these social platforms be doing better in terms of making the platforms accessible?
I think that it's hard to say that I personally have made things more accessible. I think that I always try to defer back to my community because we together have made these efforts and these strides. And I hope that at the very least, other Black disabled people um, feel more comfortable in their own skin. And like I always get teary eyed when I think about like the parents that will say to me, like especially Black moms who say like I raised my child differently because my child has a disability and I didn't know how to raise them because there's no examples of it
Mm,
as Black folk.
mm-hmm.
And they're like, I changed the way I raise my child because like you're teaching me different things about how they have to interact with the world. And like, I'm so like weeping at like on my phone,
Right.
and that means
Huge.
yeah, it means the world to me. And that's what I hope I've changed, is that Black disabled people are a little bit kinder to themselves, and that the world is a bit kinder to Black disabled people because we can be seen more readily. Um, yeah, and I think that it always gets me when I hear that type of stuff.
Tell me, how has your content evolved from when you first started creating to where you are now?
I think it's interesting. I think when I first started creating, I wasn't really doing it with the intent of creating. I was just trying to like share a story. And now now like I'm very much so intent on understanding the conversation and responding to it. And being really cognizant of what's going on in the disability community, as well as
Mm,
how what the world's doing it affects disabled people. And so I'm more intentional about the things that I say, more personable, because I was just on Twitter when I first started, so like people see my face talk. Um, yeah, so that's kind
oh,
of
I
how it's
see.
evolved so
I
far.
would love for you to bestow upon us any advice that you would give new disabled content creators out there.
Yeah, so the advice I usually give new disabled content creators, especially, is when you start your platform, take a step back. Like, I know you're excited to advocate and all these things and like 100%, but first of all, you're going to need to take rest for yourself. And second of all, you're going to need to listen to other people within the disability community. And just because you talk about disability does not mean that you don't have to unlearn all your other isms. Those are just as important when talking about disability as your knowledge of disability is. So take a step back, understand the conversation, and understand the community that you are now beginning to advocate for or represent or be a part of.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Everything is Better with Creators Beyond Disability series. To listen to more episodes, check out Everything is Better with Creators on all podcast channels.